I'm a paranormal investigator, and the mansion that hired me is trying to keep me inside. Part 2. Chapter 9, The Locked Cellar. Doors are promises. But locked doors in haunted houses? Those are threats. And the ones that have stayed closed the longest are usually locked from the inside. There are rules you don't break in places like Wintermere. You don't knock after midnight. You don't speak to the mirrors. And you don't open sealed doors. I broke one. It happened after a night of scratching that never stopped. Not in bursts, like before this time, it was constant, like something digging through the walls, trying to claw its way closer with every breath. By morning, the nails I'd hammered into the mirror had popped out. All of them. My coat had fallen to the floor like it had been peeled off. And on the glass, drawn in fog though the room was cold, was the word. Down. That's all it said. Not a request. Not a warning. A direction. I found Ellis in the dining hall. He hadn't eaten. He just sat there, staring at a cold plate of toast and marmalade that looked untouched but half-eaten. Like someone had taken bites while he looked away. I asked him what was in the cellar. He looked up, eyes bloodshot and dry, like someone who hadn't blinked in hours. You don't want to go down there? But I think I already did, I said. In a dream. Or something that wasn't mine. He didn't answer. Just stood and walked away. That was permission enough. The cellar door was hidden beneath the servants' stairs, behind a warped linen cabinet that I had to drag across uneven stone. It had no handle, just a rusted iron plate with two old-fashioned bolt locks, both sealed shut with wire and what looked like solder nails. It didn't open easily. Took me 40 minutes, a flathead screwdriver, and enough curses to offend a priest. When the final lock gave way, the door didn't creak. It exhaled. The stairwell down was pitch black. Not the kind of dark you adjust to. The kind that feels full. Like the air has texture. I lit a lantern from my pack and descended. Step after step after step. It took longer than it should have. I felt like I was walking beneath the earth, far deeper than the house should have allowed. Finally, the steps ended at a dirt floor. And a smell hit me, metallic, thick, and familiar. Blood. The first thing I saw was the chains. 4 lengths of heavy iron bolted into the stone walls, equidistant around a small, circular chamber. Each chain had a shackle on the end sized for a human wrist or ankle. One still had skin fragments clinging to it. Dried. Old. But unmistakable. There were scratch marks on the floor. Deep. As if something had been dragged. Or tried to drag itself away. And in the center of the room? A pit. No more than 2 feet wide, ringed in stone. Covered by a rusted iron grate. It was breathing. Not fast. Not loud. But there was a rhythm to the air coming through the slats. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. I leaned down, carefully. The air that rose from the pit was warm. And wet. And with it came a whisper, not in my ears, but in my chest. You're late. I fell back, dropped the lantern. The flame flickered and went out. Total darkness swallowed me. But the whisper stayed. Right beside my ear now. You opened the door, Dylan. You let me remember. I scrambled backward, felt cold stone walls press in on me. My hands brushed something in the dark, a box, wood, or leather bound. I fumbled it open and found pages. A journal. I lit a match, held the flame low. The writing was old, handwritten in rushed, slanted ink. Some of it was crossed out violently. Others, underlined again and again. Do not feed it memory. It dreams through the walls. It is not a ghost, it is the basement of the soul. It wears us when we forget ourselves. There is no bottom to the pit. Only mirrors facing downward. And finally, Everett says it showed him a version of himself with no eyes. It asked if it could wear him for a while. He said yes. A sound rose from the pit. Not words. Not breath. A wet shuffle. Like something rising up the shaft, 1 inch at a time. I didn't wait to see it. I ran. Back up the stairs. Through the hall. Slammed the door behind me and wedged a chair beneath the knob. My hands were shaking. My lantern broken. And the journal still clutched to my chest like a holy text. I looked down at the final page. There was no writing. Just a drawing. A door. And beneath it, 4 words. Don't let it out. That night, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Not coming up. Going down. And they weren't mine. Chapter 10, Dreams Turn Violent. There's a kind of dream that doesn't let go when you wake up. It clings to you. Breathes through you. And eventually it starts asking you to sleep again. It started with the stairs. In the dream, I was walking down them again, the ones into the cellar. But they weren't stone anymore. They were flesh. Spongy. Breathing. My boots made a squelching sound with every step. I tried to stop walking. But my legs moved on their own, like I was being pulled downward by a rope tied to my ribs. I carried no lantern. Only a mirror, heavy and cold in my hands. The descent never ended. Just twisted downward, tighter and tighter, until the staircase became a spiral of bone. Human, maybe. Maybe not. And then came the whispers. Hundreds of them. Not behind me. Inside me. We've warned you before. You fit better this time. You should have stayed asleep. When I reached the bottom, there was no pit. No chains. Just a single door. I opened it. Inside was a dining room, Wintermere's. Only everything was wrong. The candles on the chandelier were made of fingers, lit at the tips. The portraits on the walls showed me, at different ages, doing things I've never done. Laughing with people I've never met. Bleeding from wounds I've never had. And in the seat at the head of the table? Me. But his mouth was gone, sealed shut with jagged black thread. He held a knife. And he was staring right at me. I woke up screaming. Chest heaving. Skin cold. The room was dark. My lantern was out. My nails were caked with something dark and flaky. And my arms? Scratched. Dozens of them. Thin, red slashes down both forearms. Not deep. But precise. Like someone had written something and then erased it. I stumbled to the mirror still nailed up and tore the coat down. For a second, my reflection wasn't mine. It was him again. The version of me from the cellar. The one smiling from the west wing mirror. He raised a hand and ran a bloody finger down his own arm right where my scratch was. Then he mouthed something. I couldn't hear it. But I understood. You did this. I stepped back, heart pounding. Pulled out my recorder. I checked the audio from the night. Between 2:41 a.m. and 3:12 a.m., the recorder picked up the sound of footsteps, not walking. Pacing. Around my bed. Again. And again. And again. Then, whispering. Not words this time. A sound. Chewing. Wet. Slow. Measured. I fast-forwarded. And then came a voice I couldn't place. Male. Cold. Like wind through a coffin. He's softening now. We'll fit soon. I left the room. Ran water in the hall wash basin. Washed the blood off my arms. It stung like acid, even though the cuts weren't deep. Ellis found me an hour later, shirt soaked in sweat, eyes wide. He took one look at the scratches on my arms and didn't ask a single question. He just said, "It's marking you. It's trying you on." That night, I didn't sleep. I knew if I did, I'd dream again. And this time, I might not wake up. But even awake, I started seeing things. just for seconds. A shadow walking past a mirror I'd covered. A reflection of myself nodding when I shook my head. A girl at the end of the hallway, dragging a broken doll by its hair. When I blinked, they were gone. But the damage was done. The house wasn't haunting me. It was rehearsing me. Chapter 11, The Room That Moves. Haunted places don't trap you with ghosts. They trap you with familiarity. But what if the house never lets you learn its shape? What if it's not haunted at all, just hungry? I noticed the change when I went looking for the nursery again. Same time as before. Same hallway. Same cracked porcelain knob on the door at the end. Only this time, it wasn't there. The hallway ended at a blank wall. As if the door and the room beyond it had never existed. I turned around, thinking I'd taken the wrong turn. Walked back. Counted the doors. 3 left. 2 right. End of the hall should be gone. No nursery. No mobile. No cradle. Just blank wall. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Old houses shift. Wood warps. Maybe Ellis had hidden the room. Maybe I was too tired. But then the library moved. Not disappeared, moved. I know it did, because I scratched a mark into the wallpaper outside the door with the corner of a matchbox. A small X, just below the oil painting of the blindfolded woman. I wanted to trace my steps. I wanted proof. I went back 10 minutes later. The painting was gone. The wallpaper was a different color. And when I found the library again 2 corridors over, and down a staircase that wasn't there before, my X was still carved into the wall. Just under a different painting now. One I hadn't seen before. A boy. Standing in the woods. With no shadow. I called Ellis. Told him what I'd seen. He didn't sound surprised. It does that, he said. Once it notices you notice it. Do you hear yourself? I asked. Ellis, houses don't move. He was silent for a long time. Then, calmly. This one does. It wants you disoriented. Isolated. You can't leave something you can't map. That night, I made a floor plan. Room by room. Hall by hall. I took measurements. Walked every corridor. Timed myself. Counted doors. Windows. I left chalk marks along corners, breadcrumbs like a Grimm's fairy tale. By midnight, I had a clear sense of the east wing. By morning, none of it matched. Doors opened into closets that hadn't been there. Stairwells went up 3 flights and came back down to the same hallway. My chalk marks were either gone or had moved. One arrow I drew pointed left last night. This morning, it pointed down. And when I stood in front of a bathroom I'd never seen before, I felt something watching me from behind the closed door. I opened it. Inside wasn't a bathroom. It was a long hallway. Same wallpaper. Same flickering sconces. At the end of it stood a mirror. Uncovered. I didn't go in. I slammed the door shut and ran. Found myself somewhere near the west wing again. The corridor twisted into a tight L shape I knew hadn't existed. I turned a corner and nearly slammed into a wall of bookshelves. Behind me, the hallway was gone. Ahead, a room I hadn't built. I stood there a long time, trying to breathe evenly. Then I turned slowly in place. The floor beneath me creaked, not like wood underfoot, but like vertebrae shifting under skin. It was alive. The house was alive. It wasn't just remembering me. It was adapting to me. Back in my room, at least I think it was my room, I found one of my candles partially melted in a new place. A corner I never put it in. And on my pillow, a note. Plain parchment. 6 words, written in a childish hand. The room you want is watching. I looked up. The mirror I'd covered with a towel was bare again. And in the reflection, the door behind me was opening. But in real life, it was shut. That night, I slept with a compass and a notepad in my hand. The compass spun endlessly. The notepad? Empty. Because every time I tried to write where I was, the room changed again. Chapter 12, The Portrait. A haunted house can break your body. But some of them, the worst ones, don't want your corpse. They want your place. It started with a feeling. Not fear. Not panic. Recognition. I was passing through the grand dining room mid-morning, or as close as I could guess in this place where time had begun to slide, and I felt something shift. You know that sensation when someone is staring at you? It was like that. Only, thicker. Not from behind. Not from the shadows. From the wall. There's a massive oil painting that hangs over the fireplace in that room, 10 feet long, easily. I'd passed it before, barely noticed it. A typical aristocratic family portrait. Seated father. Stern matriarch beside him. 4 children standing stiffly around the chairs. Painted in late 1800s style, dark clothes, no smiles, backgrounds that swallowed light. But today the painting had changed. I don't mean it looked different. I mean it was different. There was an extra figure now. At the far right of the frame, standing just behind the youngest boy. Wearing dark clothing, hands behind his back, neutral expression. Me. Down to the coat. The boots. Even the faint shadow of stubble across my jawline. The figure was my height, had my posture. And the face, God help me, the face was mine. Painted in oil, perfectly blended into a portrait that had to be at least 120 years old. I stared, frozen. My mouth went dry. The longer I looked, the more familiar the figure felt. Not like looking in a mirror. Like looking at an old photo I didn't remember taking. Then I noticed the man seated in the center. The supposed patriarch. Hair gray, eyes dark, mouth turned slightly down at the corners. Only. The eyes were mine. Not just similar. Identical. Same iris pattern. Same scar on the left eyelid, from a fall I'd taken when I was 8. A scar no one could replicate. No one could have even known about. The brushwork was masterful. Disturbingly precise. I leaned closer. There were more of me. Subtle things. The standing child closest to the fireplace. Same hands. The woman's shadow on the carpet. My silhouette. I wasn't looking at a portrait anymore. I was looking at a collection. I backed away, slowly. My pulse roared in my ears. My hands trembled. And that's when I saw it. The eyes of the painted version of me. Moved. Just a fraction. But I know what I saw. They shifted, following me across the room. I ran to find Ellis. Found him in the study, staring at a fire that wasn't lit. I'm in the portrait, I said. He didn't ask which one. He just nodded, without turning. You noticed sooner than most. What the hell is happening to me? He finally looked at me. And said. It's copying you? He led me to the old gallery upstairs. A room I hadn't entered before. It was locked. He produced a key from a rusted chain around his neck. Opened the door slowly, like a priest entering a crypt. Inside, hundreds of frames. Portraits, sketches, crayon drawings. Charcoal. Watercolor. All of them people who had lived in Wintermere. He pointed to a shelf against the far wall. That one there, top right. He was a cousin. Stayed here in 1912. Saw himself in a photo before it was taken. He moved down. She was an aunt. She painted her own funeral by accident. And finally, he reached a dusty canvas with a sheet draped over it. He pulled it back. There I was. Half finished. No face yet. But the clothes were right. The posture. Even the cut on my knuckle from 2 days ago. The paint was still wet. Why? I asked. What does it want with me? Ellis looked tired. More than tired. It wants to belong. It needs to keep itself full. And it does that by adding people to its memory. He paused. You're becoming architecture? Later that night, I returned to the dining room. The portrait was still there. But the version of me in the frame? He was smiling now. Just slightly. And the boy closest to the fireplace who had shared my hands? Now had my voice. When I leaned in close enough to hear, the painting whispered. It suits you. I fled the room. But even as I shut the door, I knew. Wintermere wasn't just haunting me. It was painting me in. Chapter 13, The Music Box. A house like Wintermere doesn't just haunt the present, it rummages through your soul, digs up the parts you buried deepest, and plays them back, out of tune. It started with a sound. Soft. Hollow. Like porcelain teeth tapping ivory keys in a child's nightmare. I was in the east corridor, trying to retrace my steps from the day before the path to the study had vanished again. Every hallway looked the same now. Familiar, but not right. Like walking through a dream that used my memories as props. But this sound. It wasn't just another creak. Not the whispering. Not the shifting of the walls. It was a tune. Delicate. Faint. Almost innocent. And I recognized it instantly. My sister used to hum it when we were kids. Not a real song. Just a little melody she made up, silly, repetitive, and sweet. She'd sing it while brushing her doll's hair, or while lining up her crayons in obsessive color-coded rows. 4 descending notes. Then a pause. Then 3 quick ones. She called it the raindrop song. I never told anyone about it. Not once. Not even after she died. Especially not after she died. And now, I was hearing it in the walls. I followed the sound. Room to room. Hallway to hallway. The tune echoing faintly, always just beyond the next door. Until finally, I found it. A music box. Sitting alone on a small wooden table in an alcove I hadn't seen before. The walls here were pale pink, faded now, cracked in places, peeling. Dust settled thickly across the furniture, except for the music box itself. It was spotless. Waiting. Carved mahogany. Brass hinges. A porcelain ballerina inside, spinning slowly even though the lid was open and the winder untouched. I stepped closer, pulse pounding. The melody was still playing. Still hers. I sat down on the floor in front of it, legs folded like a child. For a moment, I just watched the ballerina spin. She twitched slightly, like her joints had corroded inside. The air smelled like burned sugar and lilacs. And the tune, it was perfect. Every note exactly as I remembered. But slower. Warped. Like it was being played underwater. I reached out and touched the edge of the box. The spinning stopped. And from the porcelain figure's cracked mouth, I heard a voice. Not mechanical. Not distorted. My sister's. You left me. I recoiled. The music box started up again on its own. The ballerina spun faster. Faster. Her head tilted back, eyes blank, mouth opening wider. Why didn't you come back? I tried to close the lid. It wouldn't budge. The music got louder. Not in volume but in presence. It filled the room like it had weight. My vision blurred. I felt dizzy. Then came another voice. My own. She drowned. It was your fault. You let her go in first. You said you'd be right behind her? My hands trembled as I forced the lid shut. Silence returned instantly. The air in the alcove shifted. Fell tighter, closer. Like something had been listening in from inside my head. I stepped away. Behind me, something rustled. I turned. The wallpaper in the alcove, once soft pink, was peeling in long, vertical strips. Underneath it, writing. Etched into the plaster was something sharp. Maybe a nail. Maybe a bone. Over and over again, like a chant. Raindrops fall / Dylan lies / Clara watches / someone dies. I staggered backward, hand over my mouth. My sister had drowned when she was 10. I was 12. I'd told her I'd count to 3, and we'd jump in the lake together. I jumped. She didn't. And by the time I realized, she was already under. I never told anyone she'd hesitated. Never said she looked scared. Never said I didn't turn around fast enough. Wintermere knew. The house had reached into me. It had found the thing I buried deepest and given it a soundtrack. And as I turned to leave, I caught one last look at the music box. The ballerina had stopped spinning. But now her head was tilted toward me. And her mouth was just slightly open. Like she was waiting to speak again. That night, I woke to the melody playing faintly inside my room. No music box in sight. Just a tune. And a child's voice, faint and playful. 1, 2. Dylan's coming too. Chapter 14, The Hidden Room. Haunted houses keep their worst memories behind walls. Not because they want them forgotten, because they want someone else to find them. It was the smell that led me to it. Not rot. Wintermere had plenty of that. This was different. A kind of sour, chemical scent, like ammonia mixed with dirt and age. The smell of old fear. Of something that had fermented in the dark. I was in the West Wing again. I don't remember walking there. I only remember being suddenly aware that the wallpaper near the staircase was breathing. Just slightly. In and out. Like a pulse under fabric. There was a seam in the wall I hadn't noticed before. A vertical line running from floor to ceiling, a hair's width wide. Too straight to be a crack. Too deliberate. I pressed my palm against it. Warm. Then I leaned in and knocked just once. Hollow. Not wood. Not stone. Brick. I fetched tools. Crowbar. Chisel. Hammer. Ellis didn't stop me this time. He just watched from the other end of the hallway and said, "If you open it, don't close it again. That's the deal." Then he turned and walked away. It took hours. Behind the wallpaper was old mortar, crumbling and soft. The bricks beneath it had been stacked backward, flat sides out, as if whoever sealed it wanted it done quickly, not cleanly. Eventually, the last brick gave way. And behind it, dark, still, air that hadn't moved in decades. The hole was just wide enough for me to crawl through. Lantern in my teeth, I pulled myself into a narrow passageway. Dust choked the air. I coughed hard, wiped my face, and held the lantern up. The room wasn't large. 10 feet by 6, maybe. Stone floor. Stone walls. But no door. No furniture. Just a single, rotted mattress in the far corner. And on top of it, curled tightly into itself. Bones. Small. Child-sized. I froze. The skull was turned inward, as if the child had died mid-sob. Tiny ribs clung to cloth that had long since turned to threadbare pulp. The bones of the fingers were curled, brittle, short. And the nails. Oh God! The nails were shattered. Because every inch of the room, every wall, every corner was covered in scratches. Not random. Not panicked. Intentional. Repetitive. Hundreds. Thousands. Carved by bare hands, fingernails digging into stone until they broke. Words. Sentences. Names. The first one I saw, over and over again. I'm sorry. Then another. I was good. Then. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out. I turned in place, the lantern casting sharp shadows. Some of the scratches were layered on top of each other, like the child had tried to override her own despair, bury it beneath new pain. Some were just marks clawing, panicked, animal. And one wall had nothing but tallies. 50 rows. Each with 10. 500 days. Or nights. Or screams. Who knows? Near the far corner, I found something else. A small tin box. Inside, a doll's head. Porcelain. Cracked. Eyes missing. Hair still clinging to the scalp in patches. Wrapped around it was a ribbon. On the ribbon, embroidered in faded thread. Clara. I dropped it. Almost screamed. My lantern flickered. And from the far corner of the chamber, where the shadows had grown too still, I heard it. A tiny voice. No louder than a breath. You found me. I backed out of the hole, crawling fast, dirt in my mouth, blood on my knuckles. I sealed the wall behind me with an old dresser. Not that it would help. Nothing that had lived in that room needed a door to get out. Later that night, I found something under my pillow. A fingernail. Tiny. Splintered. Still wet with blood. Chapter 15, The East Wing. Some doors don't lead anywhere. Some lead to places where you've already died. You just haven't remembered it yet. Ellis was gone. I hadn't seen him in nearly 2 days. Not a note. Not a sound. Not a single footstep in the dust. Just his coat hanging limply in the entryway, pockets turned inside out. His shoes still neatly placed by the cellar door. At first, I thought maybe he'd finally left the house. But deep down, I knew better. Wintermere doesn't let people go. Not if they've seen too much. Not if they've started becoming part of the story. The house had grown quieter since his disappearance. Not peaceful. Just expectant. Like something was clearing its throat. Rooms stayed dark longer. The clocks, none of which ever told the right time, had all stopped within minutes of each other. 3:03. And then came the voice. It happened as I stood at the landing between the east and west wings. I'd been pacing, trying to find a route that hadn't changed again. Then I heard it. Dylan. My name. But not from behind me. Not above or below. From inside the east wing. And the voice Ellis. Or something using him. I hadn't dared enter that part of the house since day 2. But now the door, once locked, stood slightly ajar. Beyond it, darkness. And a strange warmth. Like breath waiting on the other side. I lit a lantern. Drew my knife from my pack. I don't know what I thought that would do. Habit, maybe. Hope. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. I didn't turn around. The corridor stretched longer than it should have, geometrically impossible, longer. My footsteps sounded wrong, like I was walking on stone, not wood. The wallpaper here had peeled completely away, revealing cold plaster carved with names. Most I didn't recognize. But one I did. Dylan Evans, over and over. Dozens of times. In different handwriting. Different sizes. Some shakily etched like a child. Others in deep, angry gouges. At the end of the corridor stood a door with no handle. Smooth. Black. Breathing. I pressed my hand to it. Warm. It opened on its own. Inside was a room I'd never seen before. I shouldn't have been able to see it. It wasn't just hidden, it didn't exist in the architectural logic of the house. An enormous square chamber, no windows, lit only by flickering candlelight suspended in the air without holders. The walls were mirrored. But the reflections lagged. They moved a half-second behind. And in the center of the room were bodies. They were laid out carefully. 7 of them. All of them, me. Some bloated. Some desiccated. One looked burned. Another was twisted in a way that no human body should be. Each version wore different clothing, had different wounds. But the face is undeniable. I was looking at myself. At my ends. I stepped closer to one of them. The skin was pale, lips blue, eyes still open. And in the open palm of this dead Dylan was a mirror shard, bloodied at the tip. My reflection stared back at me through it, but the eyes in the glass were smiling. The body's mouth began to move. Slow. Deliberate. Wrong choice, again. I stumbled back. Turned toward the mirrors lining the room. The reflections were no longer synced. One version of me stood still while I moved. Another was looking away. But one stepped toward the glass. Raised a hand. And pressed it against the inside. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Seamless wall. I was sealed in. From behind, I heard dragging. Bone against stone. A wet shuffle. I turned and saw that one of the corpses had moved. Not sat up. Not stood. Just shifted. Its head tilted. And then, from all corners of the mirrored room, came whispers in my own voice. You've done this before? This time won't be different. This is where you end. Again. 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 I screamed. Pounded the wall. Looked for cracks, seams, anything. And then, light. A slit. A crack of hallway brightness opened behind me. Just wide enough to slip through. I didn't question it. I ran. When I looked back just once, the door was gone. The hallway was short again. Normal. But the names carved into the plaster now included one more. Dylan Evans. Removed. Scratched freshly beneath it. Still bleeding. That night, I checked every mirror in my room. Covered them. Nailed them. Smashed one. But when I looked out the window, I saw the impossible. In the reflection of the dining room across the yard, through the glass, one of me was still inside. Sitting at the table. Waiting. Chapter 16, A House That Watches. The house was never reacting to me, it was watching me react to it. That's how it knew what to show me next. It took me too long to realize it. At first, I thought the house just moved at random. A trickster, a maze with a pulse. I thought the rooms rearranged themselves out of madness. But madness is chaotic. Mindless. Wintermere is not. After the East Wing, something changed. The house stopped hiding its interest. It didn't just shift rooms anymore, it started staging them. Arranging objects I hadn't seen in years. Items from my childhood. Places I shouldn't have remembered. My old red lunchbox from second grade sat neatly on the hallway table one morning. A photo of my dog, Rufus, dead since 2006, appeared on the vanity in the second-floor guest room. Same worn frame. Same bite mark on the corner. When I picked it up, the glass was warm. I began testing the house back. I left notes in certain rooms. Marked pages in dusty books. Rearranged chairs. Whispered questions into cracks in the wall. And the house answered. Sometimes subtly. Sometimes not. Once, I asked out loud. What do you want from me? The next morning, carved into the wall beneath my bed. To see what you'll choose. That word kept repeating. Choose. And then I started noticing patterns. 3 hallways. 1 lit. 1 dark. 1 flickering. I took the lit one first. Found a sealed door, behind which something knocked twice and whispered my name backward. Next time, I took the dark one. Found the old nursery again. But this time, it was pristine. Toys unbroken. Cradle whole. And Clara, her voice sang to me from the shadows. Third path. Flickering hallway. No doors at all. Only mirrors. Each one showing a different scene from my past. Only one of them I remembered. It became clear. Wintermere wasn't just shifting. It was presenting options, scenarios, triggers. It was watching to see how I'd respond, what I'd fear, what I'd avoid, what I'd walk toward, even when I knew better. And it wasn't just doing this to me. In the gallery, I found a journal I hadn't seen before. Inside, entries from a previous resident. Handwriting tight, controlled, eventually unraveling into chaos. The house observes. It copies. Not to trick you but to understand which version of you it wants to keep. It doesn't consume. It curates. Every choice is a mirror it builds from. It doesn't trap you. You build the prison by choosing which door to open. One entry chilled me. My son saw himself playing in the garden. But I hadn't let him outside in days. When I checked the window, there were two of him. Only one came back in. Wintermere wasn't simply haunted. It wasn't infested. It was learning. Evolving. I started catching it watching me in ways that no house should. A painting I'd passed a dozen times was suddenly angled. It now faced the corridor I most often used. Candles only flickered when I entered rooms that I hesitated before opening. Once, I muttered to myself. I wish I hadn't come. The next time I opened the foyer door, the outside was gone. Just more hallway. And the worst part? I began to feel evaluated. Judged. Measured. Not morally but like prey. The house was deciding whether I was worth keeping. One morning, I found an envelope on the desk in my room. No stamp. No handwriting. Inside, a photograph. Black and white. Slightly burned at the edges. It showed me, standing outside Wintermere Hall, staring up at it. Only the photo was dated 2 years ago. I hadn't even heard of this place 2 months ago. On the back, written in pencil. You came here before. You always come here. That night, I tore down the last of the paintings. Smashed one of the hallway mirrors. Ripped up part of the floorboards in my room. Underneath, another note. Burned into the wood. As if waiting for me to find it. You're learning. Good. That means we can begin. The house wasn't just haunting me anymore. It was preparing me. And I don't know what for. Only that I'm not the first. And if I keep playing its game I might not be the last.
The story may end here. But the darkness never sleeps. Like this video to keep the shadows stirring. Share your whispers in the comments. Your voice shapes the next nightmare. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Gothic Hour Stories and Mysteries. Where every tale lingers, and every soul leaves a mark, the Gothic Hour awaits.